This right here, this is the map of all incidents involving tourists in Iceland over the last couple of years. And even though Iceland is one of the safest countries in the world when it comes to crime, there are still many other dangers on this island that you should probably know about. And that's why the goal of today's video is to keep you safe from all the hidden dangers on this island that many people traveling here are completely unaware of. Let's start with one of the most frequent questions I get. Are there any dangerous animals living in Iceland? And here I have some good news for you, because Iceland doesn't have any dangerous spiders, no poisonous snakes, or especially no dangerous predators living here. The biggest predator that you will come across in the wild is probably the Arctic fox, which is about the size of a cat. And one common misconception is that there are polar bears in Iceland, which simply isn't the case. However, sometimes a polar bear can drift to Iceland from Greenland on an iceberg. Like this one that made its way to the area of Westfjords last year. But when this happens, they are usually spotted quickly and then have to be put down. But why are they shot and not simply captured and brought back? Well, from what I understand, this is simply the easiest option for them. And sadly, there hasn't been any other solution to this yet. But there are also some other concerns about preventing the spread of unwanted diseases to Greenland. Either way, the chances of you being attacked in Iceland by a polar bear are probably lower than winning a lottery. But to be completely frank, sometimes when I'm camping somewhere out in the wild on a beach in a remote fjord, I think to myself how unlucky I would be to, be there thinking there is nothing that could hurt me and then being ripped into pieces by some hungry polar bear that accidentally drifted here to Greenland. Yeah. But seriously now, the only potentially dangerous animal living in Iceland on land which I can think of is probably a wasp. And I'm not sure about the other areas of Iceland, but at least in Troll Peninsula where I live, I feel like the wasp population increased significantly last year. You can usually find them nesting in trees or underground. And this can be tricky because if you accidentally step on a nest, there is a good chance that you will get attacked or stung even multiple times. And even though I have never been stung by wasp in Iceland, I know people who have. And even though this is very rare, it is still good to be aware of this, especially if you know that you are allergic to wasp stings or similar insect bites. But now the things are going to get a little bit more serious as we move to something that has claimed lives of multiple people over the years. And that is all kinds of photo locations around the island, and here is what I mean. Most of the sites around Iceland don't have any safety features, other than a simple rope marking where you can and cannot go. But you know how it is, people just don't care and they just want to get as close as possible, avoid having other people in their frame, or sometimes, well, let's be honest, sometimes people just miss a couple of brain cells. For example, if the site is a waterfall, there is usually a lot of mist in the air, making the surrounding vegetation extremely slippery. And especially in winter, it often turns everything into solid ice. And if you fall into the river and survive the fall, there are still many dangerous rapids. And I mean, even if you manage to get out of the water, the hypothermia will kick in very quick. And so if you're planning to come here in the winter, it could be a very good idea to buy one of these ice grips that you can strap over your shoes and wear near areas like waterfalls and the rivers. But it's not just waterfalls that can be dangerous. There are also many sites around the island located on the edge of cliffs. The tricky part here is that Iceland's soil is very unstable and can easily crumble under your feet. Erosion is everywhere, especially near cliff edges, so you need to be very careful about where you're stepping. There's even been a case of a man falling off Lautrabjarg cliffs, which rise up to 440 meters at their highest point. The big danger in the areas like Lautrabjarg is that the puffins dig their nests right into the soft parts of the cliff edges, making them even more dangerous, which means you can easily step through a nest, lose your balance and fall. I don't know, maybe we should list puffins as one of the most dangerous animals of Iceland. But now let's talk about Reynisfjara beach, a place that has sadly claimed several lives too. What makes Reynisfjara beach so dangerous are the so-called sneaker waves. These waves are almost impossible to outrun. They come without warning, sweep you off your feet and often drag you into the sea. And once you are in the water, it can sometimes be physically impossible to get back out. This beach has become so notorious that Iceland actually decided to install many signs and even a warning system to basically prevent people from getting too close to the water. Unfortunately, a lot of people, maybe most of the people, completely ignore these warnings. And there are constantly new videos popping up on the internet of tourists purposely getting as close to the water as possible and trying to outrun the waves. And sadly, because of this ignorance of people, it is simply a matter of time before Reynisfjara beach becomes the last destination for someone else. Like this guy, for example, who decided to go there for a swim. I mean, what can I even say? But now, another scenario which you have to be very cautious about is hiking in Iceland. The thing is, the trails here aren't always very well marked, and the weather can change very quickly, especially in the mountains or in highlands. And while summer can bring some bad weather too, winter is where you need to be extra cautious, because if you get lost in a blizzard, there simply isn't really much time for a rescue teams to find you before hypothermia sets in. Take this Chinese couple as an example who decided to hike to Solheimssandur. You see, the hike itself isn't challenging, but it goes through a desert-like area. And when bad weather hits in a place like that, there is really nowhere you can hide from the elements, other than the plane wreck, which is also where the couple was eventually found. And to prevent this, pay close attention to the weather forecast on the Icelandic Meteorological Office website. That alone would have probably shown them that hiking that day wasn't a good idea. Second, make sure you are always wearing clothes that can insulate you well against the elements. And third, install the Safe Travel app on your phone. This can help emergency services to locate you if something goes wrong. And one piece of advice which I always give to people, simply don't go hiking here in the winter if there is snow or no visible trail. It is simply very unsafe, and it will be most likely a miserable and exhausting experience anyway. There are so many other places in Iceland to explore if you want a short walk, like black sand beaches or cozy little towns in the fjords. And finally, the biggest danger for all visitors: roads. Driving in Iceland is incredible, with breathtaking views and low traffic. But there are also many dangers that come with it. Winter road conditions especially can be very tricky. Roads are often covered in snow and ice, and strong winds can make things worse, especially for those with no experience driving on snow. That's why so many rental cars end up off the road, and most of them belong to tourists. And that's why I always encourage people to rent 4x4, especially in the winter. And I actually have a discount code in the description in the link below, so you can check it out later. Now, another danger on Icelandic roads: river crossings. While some are completely safe, others should never be attempted in a regular rental car. Not only is it dangerous, but insurance won't cover any damage. And so always do your homework or ask your rental company for advice before heading into the highlands. And one more thing I'm going to say, and I believe I'm speaking for all the locals. And even though this probably won't be your case because you have made it all the way into this part of the video, which shows that you care about planning at all, but please keep in mind, do not join the army of idiots stopping in the middle of the road just to take a photo, putting themselves and other drivers in danger. There have been so many times that I have had to slam on the brakes just to avoid hitting the car. And there have been countless cases of people stopping in the road at night with their lights turned off. And if you ask why, well, people just seem to think that it is a good idea to stop the car in the road just to watch northern lights. But other than that, if you keep all this in mind and use a little bit of common sense, then Iceland is one of the safest places on earth. And if you want to learn more about traveling to Iceland or simply get inspired, then you can watch one of these videos next, and I hope to see you there.